Alright, in this episode we're going to create a few new interesting schematic symbols that will be very useful to us. And along the way we're going to show some more eagleness that's very useful for us. So the three things that we're going to create are a title block, a accessory part, and a voltage supply, which could also be a ground. In fact, we'll create both of them because they're so fast. The title block is fairly common. People have used those in CAD things before, and in this case we're going to set it up to be for an 11 by 17 piece of paper. Now I'm not going to draw the schematic symbol. Instead I'm going to show you how to import from a previous existing library. So here I have my other projects that I'm working on for various different things, and I'm going to use a previous project that I did called the Universal Power Supply, which has a library inside of it. And as you can see, this is the Eagle control panel. And you can see as I open up the library, we have lots of pre-made parts. I made these all by hand, so I know and I love them. So let's check the title block and make sure it's the one that I want. And it is. You know, I can tell just visually that this is the one that I want. So I want to drop this into my existing active library without having to redraw the whole thing. So how do I do that? Well, I just simply go into my current project, which is my XLR to USB board, make sure that the current library is selected, and make sure that it's open, that the file is actually open. So cool, we still got our stuff from the last episode sitting there. And all I'm going to do is pick on the part that I would like, title block, and right-click on him and say Copy to Library. Now you notice I could have, if I had a schematic file open, this is grayed out. But if I had a file open, it could drop it straight into the schematic. I like to keep my projects with just a single library, so I don't actually pull in a lot of stuff. What I'll do is I will have libraries from other places and copy everything from one library to the next, and that way one library, one project, which means if I need to transfer this to a customer or to a co-developer or put it into GitHub or something like that, I still just need three files, which is the board, the schematic, and then the single library. So copy to library, which will immediately drop it right into the active library, my XLR to USB library, and that thing's good to go. Now one thing you might notice about this, it's a little unusual, is I have created some attributes that I find to be fairly useful. This is a built-in attribute called last date time. This is the drawing name, which is a built-in attribute from Eagle. But this one is a new one, and Sheet is as well. Okay. This actually is an older one, so I'm going to go ahead and modify this. This is an older title block, it looks like. So all I do is right-click on him, add its origin, and say Edit Symbol. And I'm going to add, oops, drawing name, and this will be the sheet name. Right? So I'm just going to add some more text. We'll do it the easy way. We'll just copy some existing text. And then we didn't talk much about how you edit things in Eagle. You can right-click on it and pull up the properties, which would allow me then to change the value of the text, and that's fine. You can also use this wrench tool, which is kind of the bane of Eagle's existence. But there's a thing called change. That's the wrench is the change button, and then change text, which will pop up a change text dialog box. If you were to enter it in on the command line, you would actually say change text, and that would enter in the same command. Right? It's not the big properties dialog, it's the little one. So I'm going to call it sheet name. So this will be an attribute that I will have to fill in later. Okay? So as it is right now, these attributes, drawing name and last date time, those are pre-built ones. Sheet is pre-built, but sheet name is a new one. I just created that. So I'm done with that. Remember, creating a symbol is not enough, right? I also, in order to use it in schematic, I must create a part or a device. Even if that device, like this one, has no package. It's okay, no one's yelling at you because there are no pins on it. There's nothing to connect. So this is just simply a schematic object, and we'll use that in just a second. So I had a pre-built one that's called do not BOM that goes into my script for building bill of materials, because this would be a part. It would show up on a bill of materials as a part. So I'm going to make a new one called SHT name, and you're going to ask, why would I do that? I don't know what the sheet name is going to be here while I'm building the library, and the answer is I just want to give it a default. Okay. That's all. That's the only reason that I did that step, so that the text actually does show up on the screen, and I remind myself to, hey, buddy, go ahead and fix that. I could have also built a drawn by and a few other things like that, and if you want to get really fancy with that. Okay, so that's simple. That one was easy and good to go. I'm going to do the same thing from a previous project. We'll use a different one because clearly Universal Power Supply is a little bit old. What's a good one that I've used recently? Probably SDI Food. That was pretty recent, and it has a library, and it should have an accessory block in there somewhere. It does not. Perhaps we'll edit this out of the video. I look like a fool. Contour. Come on, accessories. Wow. I know you're in conditioner. Yeah, here's one. Okay. Copy to library. All right, so this is a very simple thing, and you're going to ask, why did I build this thing in general? This is a great place to add things that aren't, they don't appear as part of the board, but they're really important. And so let's modify this just a little bit. Oops. Edit the symbol. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change things just a little bit and say change text by changing the value, the attribute from value to manufacturers, and then copying it. Do a little move. Properties, we'll just do this a different way. This will be called PN. And I'm also going to change this out. Yeah, we'll change it out. I don't want name because I don't care about it becoming accessory 1, accessory 2. Instead, I want to call it description. Okay. So I've just created a box that exists on there, and hopefully it's wide enough. That's always been a problem sometimes. But it has 3 attributes. Now this is, back to my accessory block. We'll talk about something that just happened in a second. This now exists as a part. It does not have the do not bomb thing, so when I build a bill of materials, this will show up. This is handy for things like the jumpers, the actual shorting blocks of a jumper. For example, that's a thing that I use a lot, where it's like the part on the circuit board is the header that connects 2 pins together. But the little shorting block, that little plastic block, you always forget to order. So I add that as an accessory. So I'm just going to do my usual thing, which is to add MFG. I'm just going to call it MFG, and NPN vendor okay. So I probably forgot to put anything in price. So what I've done is created defaults that I will then be forced to see on my screen. Oh, I forgot description. That's not one of my usual ones. Okay. So I will now see all that information on the screen, and I'll go in as I build the schematic and edit those things. So this is good housekeeping. Maybe add a description. Doesn't. Okay, so that's a handy one. Cool. that one, those two are very simple things. It's mostly showing you how you can copy and paste and sort of some interesting things that I do. Save. Now, we are going to create something from scratch. All your parts are going to have power supplies on them. Here's a bunch of them. I could copy those in there, but it's more illustrative to show you guys what's going on when you build one of these, because these are sort of special schematic symbols. So let's go ahead and make a new symbol, and we're going to call it ground. Okay. And everybody knows what a ground looks like, right? Now I'm going to, so it needs a pin because it's going to have a connection. I don't want it to show anything. It's not going to be passive. And it is going to be a point. Okay, so we'll get to a second what's going on here. So let's just draw it. Right, this is a regular ground, and that means that this is a good example to show you what you can do with the grid. This looks terrible. It's not enough grid for me. Grid has an alternate mode. Okay, and this is just what happens. This is the granularity you use when you hold down the Alt key. Okay, that's a little too small for me, so I'm going to do 0.025. Right, so 4 steps per. Cool. It gives me a midpoint. And now I'm holding down the Alt key in wire mode, and you can see I can snap to a finer grid. I let go of the Alt key, and I jump between them. So this is handy. It's also handy to go between millimeters and inches in schematic or in layout mode. So let's just quickly make a small ground. And kind of botched it up a little bit. I want one more layer, so I should have gone to 125. This is a super fine grid. That's not a bad looking ground, right? Okay, so the magic of this happens when I change the direction to being a supply. Okay. Now what was called a direction, when I created the pin, I had these things right here. Normally I set them up in passive mode because I don't want any of this stuff, but supply is a special one. So I can do it in text, change direction, so supply. Okay, and I'm going to do that with pin number 1. So what I just did with that is it will create a global net based on the name of this pin. Okay, so right now the name of this is like $1 or VDD at 1. All right, I don't know where to pick that up, but ground. Okay. Probably remember that from before. Now that this pin is called ground, any nets that connect to it are going to be renamed from whatever they were to ground. Also, all instances of this schematic symbol will have the same net name. So I can have these ground symbols running all over the place, and they don't have to connect to each other via nets on the schematic, which we'll see when we get into schematic section, and yet they still have the same thing. So I feel pretty good about that. You'll make grounds. You'll make, if you're like me, you make analog grounds or A grounds. You'll make plus 5 volts. You make plus 3.3 volts. Blah 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 blah. You can do all sorts of good stuff with that. So let's just make this look a little bit prettier. I don't like kind of the way that is. So I just selected all the bottom side, and then I say move group. I'm holding down the Alt key, and that's a little bit more of the ground that I'd like. Maybe I'd stretch it out a little bit or whatever. That's not important. Okay, we had so much fun with that. Let's do one more, and we're going to make a plus 5V. So my 5 volt. Okay, oops, I created a part on accident. Oh, this is a good example. Let's continue our. It's a happy accident, as Bob Ross would say. I accidentally called this 5 volt device. I'm going to just continue on with the ground and create the ground device. Remember, you must create a device / symbol for everything that happens. You can't use it just as a schematic symbol in any of the programs. You must make a device. So I called it by the wrong name, and I need to rename it. So I'll say go into the library and rename it. It's a little hard to find this guy, but it's a happy accident. This is now called ground. I now have my ground. I may later on decide that that's too small for me. I've created a symbol. Don't need a package because it's a supply line. I'm going to give it a prefix of soup. Why not? I don't really need it to be anything. And I'm also going to add an attribute in there for my bill of materials program. It says do not bump, and the value is true. Okay, so this is now useful. I can use this in a schematic anywhere I'd like. I'm still not quite happy with the shape of that, but whatever. Okay, cool. Now on to what I actually meant to do. 5 volt. We build it the exact same way as we did our other ones. It's a pin. It has a point length. I could have made it longer, shorter, whatever you'd like. I don't really want to see anything, and it is a supply pin. Okay? So I'm going to give it a name right off the bat. I use my tick to say plus 5V. Alternatively, I could have used the change name command. I could have used the name command. I could have used a bunch of different things. The reason I didn't have a text label on there, I could have, is I want to control where the name is kind of located. So make a little wire. I'm just going to make this guy a little kind of triangular shape, and we'll make it an open triangle. So I'll do it with, not with the polygon command. Yeah, I'll make it fillable. Why not? Holding down the Alt key and using the appropriate wire bend. It's not quite symmetric yet. I feel like that guy is a little extra on that side. Maybe a little skinnier. Okay, cool. And then text. Okay. Now, normally I would put text on one of the other layers, but this is kind of part of the symbol, so I'm going to keep him right where he's at. On the proper layer. So cool. Save. Create a device called plus 5V. And it's going to obviously have my 5 volt port on it. Again, my attribute. Do not bomb. True. Another soup. These will actually have names like soup 1, soup 2, soup 3 as you drop them into the package. And I want to just check one thing on my ground part. I use my show command to make sure that I got the name properly. Yep, it's good. Everybody's happy. So I'm happy with that. Save. Okay, so we have created 3 new parts that are schematic only parts. They don't have bill of materials. Sorry, they don't have footprints. So they don't represent anything particularly useful. We have a we showed how to copy and paste from other libraries so you can bring them into a single system. And we also showed some interesting things about supply nets, right, which have globally shared names. One interesting side effect about supply lines is if you have a pin that is set up, let's grab a, well, I'm in it. Oh, okay. Title block maybe? Nah, it doesn't like that. I'll explain in just a second what's happening. What's happening is you've used a symbol in a part, right? These are all active parts. They have their symbols are being used, and you can edit things. You can move them around, but you can't delete a pin that's in use, and you can't add new pins. You would have to destroy the device or part, unlink everything, and then you can make an edit to the symbol and come back. So that's something a little strange. But anyway, if I were to create a new symbol and add a part, if I choose a direction of power, what Eagle will do is automatically connect the name of that power line to a corresponding supply line. It forces it to be there so that if you want to be lazy, and not wired up your VDDs, you have a net called VDD, then all you need is one of them to exist, one of these supply nets to exist, and automatically kind of wires it up for you. I don't like that because I like my schematics to see what I see is what I get. So again, we're not interested in temp anymore, so I just go open library, say remove, we'll go on remove temp. Yes. Okay. And then we save, and we're good to go. And that's the end of this one.